So this is the access level configuration. So this is where you actually define the access level. You would assign it to a group of readers. So you would assign it to a reader group, or you're going to individually assign a reader to an access level, and then you have all these other attributes that you can configure the access level with. Your time spec. There's another section in the system where you can configure that time spec, but you would assign the time spec, the floor group. If you're using the access level with elevators, you could assign a floor group, threat level. So you only want this access level to work during normal, threat levels. But if the threat level gets escalated, you don't want that access level to work. You can have it function in that way. Disarm alarm panel. You can have the access level privilege to disarm an alarm panel when that access level gets used. And then escort type is a newer feature we added in the software. If you have, you want to require maybe a manager scan in, and then somebody behind them. You can set up the escort types here, which won't allow the basic user to scan in until somebody with a higher privilege has the escort required, the escort type on their access level.
What's the time frame on that? So if I'm a manager, I go in, and then
so it
2
was,
minutes later, someone that requires escort.
it was really designed for turnstiles more than anything. So it's like only a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So it was really designed for turnstiles. If you're bringing a group of people in, and you don't want those people to be able to access by themselves, but they can access when they're with their host. You can set it up in that way.
Can you set the time, or is it hard to time?
It's hard, yeah. We have had other customers set it up in that fashion using threat levels, where in the morning when the manager comes in, they scan their badge. It changes the threat level from off peak to peak, and then everybody else will be able to access the facility after that person scans their badge.
Yeah, the first man in rule.
Right.
We also use that, so if, let's say, certain people have the ability to disarm the alarm, and you don't want, your regular employees, you can't do that to come in and then have the alarm go off. So we'll set that up so that, that employee access level isn't activated until that alarm gets disarmed.
So down here is the double card presentation. This is where you would assign that double card access to the access level. So it would get assigned to the access level, and then you could define a max unlock time if you wanted to. If there's not a time defined, then that reader's going to stay unlocked until you lock it. It's handy a lot of times where maybe you have rooms that, conference rooms or classrooms you want it to unlock for, the teacher comes in, they scan the door, unlock the door. And then keypad commands. If you want to configure a keypad reader to trigger an event or do something in the system, you can scan the keypad with your badge and then plug in a command code that will do something in the system. Most commonly used with threat level changes or intrusion panels. You want to change the panel status from armed to disarmed. You could use a keypad where you change the threat level. You want to you want to raise the threat level to something that is occurring at your facility. You could do that with the keypad commands.
to get out of the double card, so say you have that double card rule and you have it set to 25 minutes, say I wanna lock the portal
Just double scan on it
again,
Yep.
and then, so it's back to normal.
again. So your card printed out successfully, that's good.
So it's interesting when you're talking about them conceptually, it doesn't make sense, but then I've used so many of them in practice.
So we talked about the people search and modifying people records. What we haven't discussed in that is deleting people or terminating records. So if you have a person in the system, a card holder in the system, and they no longer work there, or you need to deactivate their record, there are a couple of different ways to do that. One of them being you could put an expiration date and time at the top of the record. So if you set the expiration date and time for now or some date and time in the past, everything that's associated with that record will no longer be active. So that's going to deactivate any cards they have assigned, any access levels they have assigned, once that expiration date and time is reached. You can also go to the credential section and you can change the status of the credential. So if it's currently active, you can change it to disabled or one of these other statuses. And you can define custom statuses here if you wanted to. So maybe you would have one that says, terminated or whatever. You could have that defined in here as well as one of the options. And then you would just save the person and that credential would no longer be active. The issue with this, though, is if you have multiple credentials, the other credentials may still be active if they have multiple credentials assigned. So this would be good. Maybe if you're reissuing a credential, they lost this credential and you want to issue a new one, you would disable the old one and then add the new one. You could also just delete that credential. Just click the minus here, and then ask you if you want to remove it. Click OK, and that credential's no longer in the system. The system doesn't know about that card anymore. And then the other way to terminate a record is clicking delete person. So if I click delete and click OK, it's going to deactivate everything that the person has, and the record's going to be flagged deleted. The S2 system still retains the record in the database, so you can reactivate the record later if you wanted to. You can still report on that record. You can basically do everything with it that you would with an active record, but it's going to be flagged deleted, and it's no longer going to be active as far as access goes, but you can do everything else with it.
One thing to think about when you're deciding whether to delete or deactivate, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does remove the credentials that are associated with that record. So if you want to be able to see what the card numbers they had assigned, you may want to disable those cards rather than remove the record. If you don't want the record to come up on a regular person search that doesn't show deleted records, then deleting it's a way to get it to not appear in those searches.
Click OK. So now that the record's deleted, if I do a person search, that record no longer appears in the search results. If I wanted to see it in the search results, I could click include deleted records, click search, and that record's there. And then I could undelete. Now the record's reactive. What it doesn't have though, when you do an undelete, it does remove the credentials as Mike mentioned, so you will have to add credentials back onto the record. Some customers opt to leave the credentials on it and they just expire the record when the person leaves. That way they can see the credentials that were assigned, and if that person still happens to have those credentials and tries to use one of them, it will show that, you know, who that credential was associated with when they try to scan that credential. Because if you delete it here off of the record, when that person tries to use it, it's not going to work, but the log isn't going to know who that credential is associated with. So if you leave the credential on the record and that person tries to use it and they're expired, it's going to show that on the activity log that so-and-so tried to use it and they're expired. Any questions on that part? We'll jump into email groups. So email groups can be set up for a couple of different things. So you would come in here, create a new group, and then you could assign people to it. You have to have, the person has to have either an email address or an SMS email address on their person record to show up here in the email group. So if you're tasked with creating email groups, they will have to have either an email address or an SMS address assigned to their record, and then you can add them to this group or to a group. So once you have your email group set up, you can assign the group to events, you can assign it to the expiration notification, you can assign it to scheduled reports. If you have reports that are generating automatically, you can have the reports sent to a group if you'd like. So we'll jump into reports. So there's 3 different types of reports in the system. There's configuration. So if I click on that, it brings me to a new menu. And there are a number of different elements in here. And these are all in relation to elements that are configured in the system. So for instance, if I want to see cameras, like the cameras, it gives me a list of cameras and what video server they're associated with, so on and so forth. Same things with portals. Here are all the portals that are defined in the system. The readers and the resources that are associated with that portal. So these are some reports that you can use to gather information on how your system's configured. One that might be useful is from a user perspective would be maybe a reader group, or you want to see which readers are associated with which access level, that kind of thing. You can get that from here. It'll show you. Jump to history reports. So history reports are in reference to transactions that have occurred in the system. So this could be anything from person's bad activity to users logging into the system. There's another section that you could have licensed, you can have turned on in the system called the audit trail, which shows what users have been changing in the system. So these are useful if you're trying to report on transactional data. up here we have access history. It's pretty simple, you know, plug in a person's name, a search period. You could select one of these, today, yesterday, or you can put a custom period. And then you click search and it would give you the transactions that occurred during that period of time. So just click today. I won't put any other criteria. Of course, you could put other criterias in here if you want to be a little more specific, but and here are the transactions that have occurred today. Not too busy. And access history is in reference to, you know, card use, that kind of thing. It doesn't reflect, you know, people logging into the system or whatnot. We can show that stuff under custom report and general event history. The alarm resolution report, you can run a report and it will show you, if you have it configured properly, it will show you events that have occurred based on that criteria. So, I don't know which one I use. Let's see. So this gives you a list of events that were activated, the duration, how long it, you know, was activated at such time, deactivated, the duration. Just gives you some general information on the events. Of course, you can create a custom report, custom history report here, where you can kind of get a little more granular as far as, you know, what you want displayed on the report, what the report criteria are. You would do that under custom history report. This will list any reports that have been defined in the system. You can create a new one if you want. Click edit. So this gives me a list of different columns I can include on the report. Currently it has the person ID, the date, time, description, and who for the person. So it's report Saturday test, so this is a test report. The date and time, you can define a start date and end date and time, or you can use relative dates. So for instance, if you wanted to maybe schedule this report to run once a week, you could set it up so that it's, you know, only getting the last 7 days, or if you had a monthly report, you can set it up to show the last month of activities. So these are your relative date and times. The people filter, these are criteria based on the person record that you want the report to filter on. So if you only wanted it to, you know, show, you know, a certain person, you could have that, or their person ID. Location, so these are, you know, your portals or readers. You would set it up so that the report's only showing activity at those specific locations. You can set it up for portals or portal groups. Haven't really touched on portal groups, but it's a configuration setting to basically group a list of portals, typically used for time schedules and stuff like that. But then events, if you know, wanted to create a report that shows, you know, access denied, you know, you get a weekly report that shows you the access denied card reads. You could set it up so that it, you know, only gets the access denied activities. Runtime prompts, so if you wanted to go in the system and run this report at will, you would, come to this custom report tab, open up this report, and then it would prompt you for the criterias based on these. So it could be a start date and end date. And then when you run the report, it's gonna ask you what date, what start date and end date you want. Totals, you could compute totals on the report. You can add a column called totals on the report, and it will basically give you a count of what you're filtering on. Maybe it's how many people have badged through the a specific door during the day, or how many people have badged into the site during the day. You could configure the totals for those types of scenarios. And then schedule, you could have the report generate automatically. So you wanted the report to generate every Sunday. You click the day of the week you want it to generate. You can do it monthly if you wanted to, or you can do it daily just by clicking the days that you want it generated. Then you define the output of the report. So the reports can either output to a CSV or a PDF file. And then if you wanted it to be sent to somebody via email, you could select myself if you're wanting it to go to you, or you could select a person or an email group from the list, and then that report would automatically email to those people. So once the report has been defined and saved, it will show up in this list. If it has a schedule defined, it will show the schedule over here. Obviously, we have the report name, the title, the description, which are defined in the report, and then you have these actions, edit, which is what we were just in, and then we have run, which is just adding, allowing you to run these at will. You can click it, run the report. It's going to ask you the start date and time, and then you click run report, and it will give you the output of that report. List, if you've generated the report and you click list, it's going to give you those reports as they were generated. So click one of these and see if there's any output there. So this report was generated back in November 27th. I'm showing you a list of when those reports were generated. You can have it output to the screen in HTML or as a PDF or a CSV. Do you guys have any questions before you take off?
Thank you, I don't have her. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're just heating up some of the lunch items, so we've got a few minutes over, but if you could just give us a few minutes to finish that off.
Yep, almost done with everything here. So, the duty log report, this is for those duty log entries that we discussed in the monitoring widget screens. So these are to report on what operators have logged in the system for duty log entries. So you can select a time period. You can select the user if you wanted to define who you're trying to get the report on, and then maybe you're only looking for specific types of events you're trying to generate that report on. You can select that and then click run. It'll show you, and then you can export that to PDF or CSV if you want. general event history, so this is where you would report on alarms and events that have occurred in your system. There are a number of different criterias that you can put, you know, a date range. You can select a portal or an elevator if you only want to see, you know, events related to a specific door. And then down here you have a number of different options as far as what you want outputted. You can have it show everything. You can have it show only access control based alarms. You know, portal held open, portal forced open, and the access control. So these are related to a person's card. Access granted or denied events. Device communications, that's going to be in reference to the actual field hardware. So you know what the door is connected to on the network. User interface. So this is going to be for login, logout type events or failed login attempts if your system's configured to generate an event on a failed login attempt. You can have it. You can report on that. Alarm events. So these are based on any alarms in the system, and then alarm panels. Those are going to be your burglar alarms, events in relation to those. Elevators, same thing. These are elevators specific to events specific to elevators, and then miscellaneous or any other, you know, generated events that you want to report on. So you check what you want in the report. If you want to see everything, you can click, you know, all events, and it will check all of them. And then columns, you can decide which columns you want to see in that report. And once you have it configured, you can click run. You have pop-up blockers on. You'll have to see if you have anything on that report. So this is showing us all the activities or events at the main entrance portal. And then our portal access count is a tally of how many times a person has badged at a specific portal during a period of time. And, you know, we had 2 at the main entrance, probably today. And then we have people reports. So we jumped back, clicked on people. So these are going to be reports that are not transactional based, but they're based on what's been programmed and assigned to a person. So it could be access levels. So this is just showing you a list of access levels in the system, which a description if you have one, the time spec that the access level is configured with, the reader or reader groups that are assigned to that access level, floor groups if you have elevators, and then threat level groups if the access level is assigned. Access level groups, there aren't any in the system, but basically access level groups are a grouping of those access levels. So you could group these together if you wanted to, and then they would become an access level group. Credential audit, if you wanted to audit credentials not used within a specific period of time. So if you wanted to say, okay, I want to see any active badges that haven't been used in the past 90 days, I could get a listing of those credentials. So it's just a quick way to audit credentials in your system to see if they should be maybe deactivated, or maybe if you wanted to check on the use of the credential. Current users, these are the current people logged into the system. Custom person report, very similar to the custom history report, but it's based on a person, the person record. So if you wanted to maybe generate a list of employees in the system, you could put the relevant columns you want to see on the report, the first name, last name, maybe a UDF field. And then you could filter based on any of the attributes on the person page. So I want to filter field 1. If it says employee, I want to get everybody on that report that's an employee. So you would create that filter. You can filter on access levels if you want. So if you want to see who has a specific access level assigned, you would select that, the access level or access levels you want to see. Or if you wanted to see the readers or portals that people have access to, you could include those on the report. And then sort, you can have your report sorted based on your sort order. And then runtime prompts are the same as what were on the history, the custom history reports. It's just going to prompt you with a couple of fields based on what you define when you go to run the report. So maybe you want the employee type to be one of the criterias on your report, but you don't want to hard code it into the report. You want it to ask you when you go to run every time. You can have it. And then schedule is the same as the custom history report. It's going to automatically generate that report and send it to you if you want. Occupancy is basically showing you a list of different areas or regions in your facility and how many people are in those areas. So you can configure your system so it kind of tracks who or where your card holders are. And this is a photo ID gallery, basically just showing you all the photos. Portal access, if you wanted to see who has access to a specific portal, and it will generate a list of who has access to that location. Roll call, and this is going to be based. The roll call is based on regions. So if you wanted to see who's in a specific region, you click the roll call, select the region, click go, and it's going to give you a list of people in that area. Occupancy does the same thing. If you click on one of those, it's going to show you who's in that space. And then roster is just a listing of people in the system. You guys have any questions on reports? We're kind of flying through it. We're a little bit over on time. I just jumped to scheduled actions. I wanted to show this to you real quick before we break. Scheduled actions is similar to the portal actions, the portal schedule that we were looking at earlier, but it's a calendar view. So now you have the ability to select the portal. If you have portal groups, so if you have a grouping of doors in the system, it will also show you those groups here you can select. And then you can select select the portals that you want to apply a schedule to, add them to the calendar. You can unlock them, or lock if if they're normally unlocked, you can schedule them to lock. And then you can put a description if you want, and then you click OK, and it applies the schedule to that door. If you have input groups or output groups defined in your system, you'll also see them on this as well. You can apply schedules to those resources as well.